Now, the Hunt Palmer Show.
Yes! I feel like I've been waiting for this my entire life.
You're listening to the Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Jolly good fun. Jolly good.
Locking down the middle of the day.
America's favorite daytime fun show.
Live from the Raising Cane studio. This is Hunt Palmer.
Welcome in. Hunt Palmer coming to you from the Raising Cane studio downtown in the capital city on this Monday. Hope your work week's off to a good start. Hope it was a safe and enjoyable holiday weekend for you. I don't really need to start this way, but I will. We got a lot to talk about. LSU played a football game on Saturday. I don't have it in the log to talk about for the next 2 hours. The SEC hired like 14 coaches. I'm not going to talk about a lot of that. The Saints played a crazy game yesterday that I am going to talk about. I'm not sure where. There's a ton to do, and we got to pack it in to these 2 hours, and we will. And we appreciate you hanging out with us here. Got Jordan Kitchens, Katz Spazzali back there on the ones and twos. We'll go to Oxford, Mississippi in 30 minutes to talk to Michael Katz, see what's going on there and what the fallout was from yesterday. We'll have Dr. Jeremy Burnham on coming up here in 45 minutes. In hour number 2, Denton Day will join us from a national perspective on all things college football. So we've got a lot to do. And so we'll crank it up. I want to tell you this right up front. I think this is a very, very, very good hire for LSU football. I think Lane Kiffin is a phenomenal offensive mind and football coach. And there is too much that has gone into the last month for me to do it in a 12-minute segment. We've got to break this out into different iterations, and I want to keep my thoughts in order. So with that being said, I'm going to get to the result of this hire in our next segment. 15 minutes from now, we'll talk about Lane Kiffin at LSU, what he is as a coach, and what that means for the future of LSU football. But there also is a piece to this story that is the process by which we got here. And I want to talk about that too. So I'm going to split them up. And there is some negative on both sides of this process, but I want to be clear up front. I'm not being negative about the hire. The result of this hire is very, very good. It's the guy I wanted from the start. So as I kind of wind through the process and some of the things I didn't like, don't misconstrue that as Hunt saying, well, Hunt's just a pessimist. Well, the good stuff is coming, and there's good stuff here. But the result is good. The process from my end and what I know was a little bit messy on both sides, and that's part of this story. So we'll start there. This begins with Brian Kelly's exit. Scott Woodward fires Brian Kelly, okay? And then we know what happened in the days that followed. The governor got on a microphone, started saying outlandish things, and then Scott Woodward got forced out, and I didn't like the way that looked. I thought that the reasoning behind Scott Woodward's termination was disingenuous. I thought it was a little bit embarrassing for the state. I did not like that. You want to fire an athletic director because his football coach fails? I've always been good with that. But I didn't think trying to pin it on some contract and some hypothetical payment that the taxpayers were going to make to Brian Kelly was ludicrous. And I didn't like that part. And then you had the days that followed where you had Verge Osbury put in as interim athletic director. And I said, well, that's okay, because Verge has been here. He's been through a lot of coaching searches. I think he's qualified for this job, but can he go hire a coach if he's not the guy that coach is going to be working for in the future? And you couldn't submit Verge because you were trying to work through the board of supervisors, and then you hired a new president who's in charge of the board of supervisors, and then he said, well, Verge is the acting AD. I can't make a decision on that, even though he said he had already made it. And so you got that confusion. And this is all part of that process. But then I said I didn't like that process. I didn't like the way Scott was let go. I didn't like the way that the president came in and said Verge was permanent and then said he was acting. That didn't look good. But then you made Verge permanent. And I said, okay, that's good because Verge is qualified for this. He's been here for 3 decades. He's been on a lot of coaching searches. He's an LSU guy. He loves LSU. He's a football guy. He knows a lot of agents. He knows a lot of coaches. Okay, that's good. Put the committee together. Go. Okay, so I didn't like that process, but we got where we needed to get. And so then you got to go find a coach, okay? So you lock in on Lane Kiffin, and LSU does a great job. Due diligence, contact with the coach, making sure that he was comfortable with his family here, with his son here playing football, understanding what this would be in terms of resources for players and resources for assistants and what LSU can offer. And they did a great job of courting Lane Kiffin in that way. And then you get to decision time. And as I've been saying for 2 weeks, it's evident to me that Lane Kiffin's leaving Ole Miss because you're in the middle of what should be the greatest month of his coaching career, where you're beating Oklahoma. And you come back and you beat Mississippi State, and you're a playoff team. And through all of this, he doesn't sign the extension. He never says that he's staying. He leaves the door open for leaving. And all of those actions spoke so loudly that all the non-answers in the press conference, I'm going, well, this guy's going to go. And I don't believe that Lane Kiffin had to wait until Friday or Saturday to make that decision. I believe he made that decision. And I believe it's a reasonable decision. There are some people in the football world that think it's unreasonable to leave a playoff team. I think it is a reasonable decision to leave a playoff team if you think that that is a better opportunity for you. I'm not telling you what's a better opportunity. I'm telling you it's okay if you think it's a better opportunity to go. And at that point, Lane Kiffin needed to go. And the fact that it drug, I don't think was handled very well by Lane Kiffin. It is a reasonable expectation. It's a reasonable sentiment for Lane Kiffin to want to coach his team in the playoff. He recruited them. He built that team. He built that program. He got to this point. He wants to coach them. It's not realistic. It's not realistic for Ole Miss to allow LSU's head football coach to roam the halls for a month while every single player that has eligibility left is about to be a free agent and all those coaches could leave with him. You can't let the fox in the hen house for a month if you're Keith Carter and Ole Miss. You have to tell him you have to move on. And in my opinion, Lane Kiffin at that point should have said, okay, I'm going. You got to pack your bags. You got to leave your key on the desk in Oxford, and you got to go to Baton Rouge, and you got to start working. That's the way the calendar sets up. You just have to. And you can't strong-arm Ole Miss and say, well, I'm coaching. And you can't strong-arm Ole Miss and say, well, I'm taking the whole staff. I don't believe that's a professional way to act. I think if Lane Kiffin made his mind up to go to LSU, he needs to go to LSU. And finally, he did. And then you've got the Ole Miss side, which I'm not going to spend very much time on this, but Keith Carter just kind of sat there. And I understand the awful position that he was put in, but you've got to go to Lane Kiffin and say, I need a decision because I've got to move forward with my football program if I don't have one. And then you've got Lane who ultimately didn't. And so for me, this process had a lot of snags and a lot of people that may not have done the right thing every step of the way. But I've said this in so many instances with coaching searches. The process and the result don't have to mirror each other. LSU's hiring of Brian Kelly was a masterclass in terms of just getting it done. You targeted a guy. He was at a great spot. You went and got him. That's a great coaching search. It didn't work. You've seen disastrous coaching searches. Texas A&M hired Mark Stoops. He's on a plane to College Station. The internet said, don't do that. So they went, whoa, we're not doing that. Oh, Mike Elko, come on. Well, that seems to be working out okay. Disastrous process. Alabama's first choice was Rich Rodriguez. And he said, no, I'm staying in West Virginia. So they went and got Nick Saban. Well, that's not exactly a perfectly executed search. It worked out really well. And in this case, I think LSU struggled to get its ducks in a row. That wasn't a very good look. And they got their ducks in a row. And then I think they did a wonderful job on the search. And Lane Kiffin, I think, surveyed his options and was coaching and did a great job coaching. And then I think he was a little bit out of line at the end. I think it's okay to want to coach that team. It's not realistic. And at that point, he needed to tell Keith Carter, I'm leaving. Thanks for the opportunity. It's been great. Hope y'all go get it. And then you move on to LSU. But all of that being said, where I said there's some issues here, there's some issues there, what ultimately matters is not the process. What ultimately matters is the result. And when you look at this coaching carousel and you look at what everybody was doing, if you look at Hunter Yurachek in Fayetteville, you look at Scott Strickland down in Gainesville. You look at Keith Carter in Oxford. You look at John Cohen in Auburn. And if all these reports are mirroring the truth, like Arkansas got the scraps. They got the leftovers. Auburn wanted Eli Drinkwitz, but John Cohen was demanding that, hey, DJ Durkin's going to be on this staff, and Drink went, I don't think so. Florida thought they were getting Lane Kiffin. They were all in on Lane Kiffin. And then Ole Miss was too late to go get John Summerall, who probably wanted that job. Everybody's kind of making missteps, and LSU executed. LSU got the bell of the ball. That does not mean that this is going to work out the best for LSU, because these things are uncertain. But LSU's group did the best job in this coaching carousel. And they didn't have to go down and get a hopeful G5 guy. They didn't have to dip down to go get a coordinator, never done it before. They didn't have to emergency rush somebody to the podium, which we've seen in this town before. They found a target, and they went and got him. And that result was fantastic for LSU. I'm going to get into that in our next segment. But again, it's two different avenues to discuss this on. Process was bumpy, and I think there are some people that were not right there in lockstep with what they were supposed to be doing. But ultimately, I'm pretty fired up that Lane Kiffin's going to be calling plays for LSU, and I think that's going to be an exciting time, an exciting era of LSU football. So let's talk about that when we come back.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
One Bath and Closets. OneBathAndClosets.com is the website. David Duvall and his team, 30 years redesigning and remodeling bathrooms and closets. Look, it's about time for Christmas, about time for the new year. If you're thinking about, hey, let's put some work into this house. We don't want to move. We just want to revitalize it. Well, what better place to start than the bathroom? And they can do full-scale bathroom renovations, putting in showers, taking out showers, putting in tubs, taking out tubs, all your floor work, your vanity. They can do full-scale in One Bath and Closets. They can also do something simple like a tub-to-shower conversion. That can take less than a week. No matter what size project you're looking to do in the bathroom with your closets, One Bath and Closets can be your one-stop shop. David Duvall and his team can handle it soup to nuts, as he always tells me. Go to OneBathAndClosets.com. Get that free consultation. That doesn't cost you anything. Sit down with David and go through what he can do for you. He'll customize it, and you'll love it. They'll do it right the first time and leave the competition behind. It's One Bath and Closets. Find them online, OneBathAndClosets.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
After further review today will be from South Stadium Club inside Tiger Stadium. Lane Kiffin will address the media at 3:30, so 30 minutes after I go off the air. So Matt will be on for 30 minutes from South Stadium, and I think they'll carry Lane Kiffin's statement or press conference in some capacity this afternoon at 3:30, and we'll certainly have story up at LouisianaSports.net. I'll react to all of it on tomorrow's show, but for those that are looking for word from the new head football coach at LSU, you'll get that at 3:30 this afternoon from Tiger Stadium. All right, let's talk about Lane Kiffin, the hire. We briefly touched on this, but I didn't want to go too deep in before it was all said and done, and it is now all said and done. And I think this is a great, great hire for LSU. You would struggle to frame it any differently unless you just wanted to point to his exits over the years. His exits have been messy. It was messy in Oakland with Al Davis, who called him a liar. It was messy in Knoxville when he kind of left in the middle of the night there to go to USC. It was messy in USC when he was fired on the tarmac. It was messy at Alabama when he was let go for the national championship game. And it was certainly very, very messy in Oxford. So if you want to point to the end of his tenure as a bad thing for the start, I guess you could paint the picture this negatively. But if you want to look at what Lane Kiffin has done on the football field as a head coach, as an offensive mind over the last 15 years, you would have a very difficult time picking apart this hire. Lane Kiffin went to Alabama, and he ushered in Nick Saban's spread offense, dynamic offensive attack. Nick Saban at the beginning of his Alabama career was, hey, we're going to get in the I formation. We're going to run the football. We're going to Mark Ingram you and Trent Richardson you to death, and our defense is going to allow 6 points a game, and that's how we're going to win. And then he looked at this and said, well, we probably can't beat the best teams in the country anymore 17-10. Like, we're going to have to go score some points. So Kiffin came in, and he took Blake Sims, who was a converted running back and set passing records at Alabama. And then he was ushered out there, and then he went to Florida Atlantic, where they had just started the football program, like Howard Schnellenberger started it, and they had not done anything. And Lane Kiffin won 2 conference championships at Florida Atlantic. And then he went to Ole Miss. And after his first year, the COVID year, the next 5 years, he won 50 games, averaged 10 wins a season at Ole Miss. Ole Miss is one of 3 of the 12 SEC schools that were there when the SEC championship game started. One of 3 that had never reached Atlanta. Kentucky's never reached Atlanta. Vanderbilt's never reached Atlanta. Ole Miss never reached Atlanta. This is the program you took over that has not won a conference championship in 60 years. And Ole Miss won more games than everyone in the league over those 5 years except Bama and Georgia, 2 of the pillars of the sport. Lane Kiffin beat Georgia, and he beat Oklahoma, and he beat LSU. And he made the college football playoff at Ole Miss. He did a brilliant job in Oxford. Everyone in Oxford right now is suggesting that Golding is the culture guy. Golding's the guy that handles all their recruiting. Charlie Weiss is a great offensive mind. Lane Kiffin is a traitor and a snake. But the actuality is, if you go back a month and a half, he was the toast of the town, and he owned Oxford because he won at a level that no one that follows that team has seen in their lifetime unless they're 75. Some of these numbers are just phenomenal with his offenses. If you look at total offense in the nation over the last 5 seasons, 3rd in the nation this year, 2nd in the nation last year, 13th in the nation in 2023, 8th and 6th. 4 of the last 5 years, Ole Miss has had a top 8 total offense nationally, and the one time they weren't, they were 13th. You look at rushing offense. He had a team in 2022 that was 3rd in the nation in rushing. You look at passing offense. Last year, they were 2nd in the nation. This year, they're 3rd. If you look at his scoring offenses the last 2 years, 11th in the country, 3rd in the country. And you go back to 16th, 29th, 24th. This is consistently an excellent product offensively at Ole Miss. And sometimes they do it through the air as good as anybody in the country. Sometimes they do it on the ground as good as anybody in the country. But ultimately, they move the ball as well as anybody in the country at Ole Miss. And I looked back at the last 4 NFL drafts, at the offensive players that Ole Miss has had drafted. They have had 1 first-round pick in the last 4 years on offense, Jackson Dart. They have had 2 second-round picks in the last 4 years, Mingo and Harris. A couple guys on the outside. Ole Miss, in the last 4 drafts, has had a total of 8 offensive players drafted. LSU over that time has had 14. That's almost double. It's not like Lane Kiffin was taking a Ferrari there and putting up a lot of points. He was doing it with what he had at Ole Miss. And I think one of those telling things is that in the 2024 draft, he didn't have a single offensive player drafted. And they were 13th in the country in total offense. Not one drafted. And they were 13th in total offense. I did a segment on this last week. And you can go back and listen to it. I wrote a column about it at LouisianaSports.net. LSU just offers more access to dynamic players. It just does. You can point to the Grove Collective. You can point to their transfer portal class. You can point to the wins that they've rolled up. And all that is fine to point to. But the fact of the matter is that no matter if you're going back to the pre-NIL rules, pre-transfer portal rules, the Wild Wild West rules where anything goes, or what we're in now where it's you got to go through the clearinghouse. That's 3 different sets of ramifications and rules. LSU has more guys drafted than Ole Miss over that time. Ole Miss went heavy in the portal for last year's team. They had a school record, 8 guys drafted. And LSU, who at that point was saying, we're not in the business of buying players, had 7. and LSU had Will Campbell go in the first round. So there is more access to great players and draftable players here because of who grows up in the state and the brand that LSU carries nationally. And Ole Miss has got a great collective. And Ole Miss has got an administration that is aligned and is doing things very, very well there. I think Lane Kiffin is the straw that's stirring that drink. And I think he will stir that drink here in Baton Rouge with a machine that ran pretty damn good without him in terms of acquiring talent. They haven't won enough games. Brian Kelly had the worst defense in LSU history, had, from a scoring perspective, one of the worst offenses in school history this year, and the special teams has been a disaster in 2 of his 4 years. They haven't won enough games. They haven't coached it well enough, but they've had players, and they put guys in the draft, and they're going to put guys in the draft again this year. And if Lane Kiffin can put these kinds of numbers up at Ole Miss and do the things he did at Florida Atlantic, to suggest that he will come here and not be able to put up elite offenses year over year over year would be quite a limb to go stand on. Be quite a limb to go stand on. I'm not doing it. I think Lane Kiffin is going to come here. I think he's going to recruit high school players at a very high level with this staff. I think he's going to recruit the portal very well with LSU's infrastructure. And I think LSU annually is going to be in the top 15 in total offense as long as he is running the show. And that's half the battle. And today, we get reports that the plan is to keep Blake Baker. Well, to keep Blake Baker, it stands to reason you would keep Kevin Peoples and you would keep Jake Olson because those are guys Blake Baker handpicked. And it would stand to reason that you would keep Corey Raymond. And all of a sudden, you take a defensive staff that went from the worst defense in LSU history 2 years ago to a top 25 defense this year in the second year after that. Well, that's a pretty good foundation as far as the coaching staff goes. We'll see what comes from Oxford. We'll talk about that a little bit later. We'll see what ultimately happens to LSU's defense because it's still very possible that Blake Baker could be a candidate at Tulane where he played to be their head coach. And then you could see a big shift in what LSU's trying to do defensively. You're not going to get Pete Golding here. He's the head coach at Ole Miss. But this feels like a very, very strong hire for LSU. And you understand that it's tough to sit here and make guarantees about a hire when you realize that LSU just took the winningest coach in Notre Dame history who's going to the Hall of Fame, and he came here and he didn't win at a high enough level at all. And you look around at some of the coaches that have been brought on, Hugh Freeze, ton of success at Ole Miss, ton of success at Liberty, goes to Auburn, epic failure. Jimbo Fisher, national championship coach at Florida State, hired by A&M, failure. Nothing's certain. Nothing's certain. But this feels like as close to a certainty on the offensive side of the football as you could have. To take a coach who has proven this at 3 different stops, who has access to this kind of talent and these resources in that athletic department, in that stadium, and that national brand, it's just really hard to sit here and say, yeah, that probably won't work. I'm guarded because of what we just watched and some of the other examples I just laid out. But this is about as compelling a case as you can make. I think it is a great hire for LSU. It's a great hire for LSU. And we'll hear from Lane Kiffin in 2 hours, and maybe we get some answers to some of the questions that we have. And he's certainly got his quirks. And he's certainly got a reputation. I used the line in my column at LouisianaSports.net today from Seinfeld. Elaine Bennis is a bad breaker-upper. Tells about a boyfriend that she broke up with. Bad breaker-upper. You could pin that on Lane Kiffin. He's a bad breaker-upper. But, man, can he coach some football on the offensive side. And it's just very, very easy to envision the next crop of Jaden Daniels, Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas, of Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, of Zach Mettenberger, Odell Beckham, Jarvis Landry. It's not one instance where you got that one group. This happens at LSU every couple of cycles. It just does here. And it's hard to imagine it not happening again here for Lane Kiffin. And when you go through the draft numbers he had at Ole Miss, where you're looking at a bunch of 4th and 5th round picks from his offenses that were top 15, top 8, top 6 in the country, and you think about what you can get here at LSU, that can be a scary proposition. And at the same time, this is a very small piece to this puzzle, but it's one that I'm going to mention here at the back end of this. Ole Miss is one of the 3 teams on your schedule the next 4 years. I know LSU fans harbor more ill will for Alabama, more ill will for Florida, maybe more ill will for A&M based on the last couple of years. That's fine. But Texas A&M is the team, and Ole Miss is the team, and Arkansas is the team, those 3 that you're playing the next 4 years. And it is possible that you have just crippled Ole Miss's football program. It's possible Pete Golding picks it up and runs with it, and they continue to bring in the players that they think they can win with, and they get an offensive staff that may include Charlie Weiss, and that things continue to hum. That's possible, but y'all know my stance on the guy next to the guy. Y'all know my stance on Tennessee baseball. You know my stance on Texas A&M baseball. You know my stance on hiring the next guy on the bench. I think sometimes that can fall apart on you. And I think there's a real chance that Pete Golding doesn't win it nearly the clip that Lane Kiffin did. As I wrote, like, if Ole Miss's stock is trading at 10 or 11 wins in a college football playoff berth, I'm going to sell that stock. That's where I am on that. So that's a look at LSU's side of things from a process perspective in our first 15 minutes, from a results perspective in our last 15 minutes. Now let's go to Oxford. We'll talk to Michael Katz, who covers the Rebels. He was there on campus yesterday. Let's get a feeling for what happened up there, what LSU is getting themselves into, and what's next up there in Oxford, Mississippi. We'll do that with Michael Katz when we come back.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Highland Insurance Group, HighlandIG.com is the website, HighlandIG.com. If you have got your benefits that are set for renewal, your company, healthcare, and you're looking at that renewal rate going, what has just happened? Well, you're not alone. That's happening a lot with a certain brand and a certain carrier. Call the Highland Insurance Group and see if you can get a second option for your business. We know how important benefits are in terms of retaining employees, in terms of pursuing employees and acquiring talent. Got to make sure your benefits stack up with your competitors so that you can have the best talent under your roof. Well, if those premiums are too high or those benefits are not where you need them to be, call the Highland Insurance Group and see if they can help you out. Jonathan Carver and his team tell me they've taken a lot of phone calls throughout the month of November. Figure they will in December as well. If you're a business who's looking at that renewal premium and going, I don't think so, call the Highland Insurance Group or check them out online, HighlandIG.com. They're here in Baton Rouge. They can help you out statewide. It's the Highland Insurance Group, HighlandIG.com.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
Chugging along here, Monday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show. Let's go to Oxford, Mississippi. Michael Katz covers Ole Miss for the Northeast Mississippi Daily Journal. Been on the scene for the last 5 weeks. Never a dull moment there in Oxford. Joins us now on the Gems Firearms Hotline. Michael, thanks for the time. How are you?
Yeah, I slept 12 hours last night. I'm not going to lie. It's finally over. It's been a wild 2 days, 2 weeks, whatever time frame you want to put it in. It's been pretty insane.
When did it become reasonably clear to you that Lane Kiffin was going to move on from Ole Miss?
I would say probably, I would say probably Saturday. I think it was Saturday night when the reports started coming in that he planned on leaving and but he still wanted to coach the team through the playoff. And then, of course, the reports that he was, if they didn't let him coach the playoff, that he would take his offensive staff with him and leave the cupboard kind of bare at Ole Miss. That's when it kind of, at least in my eyes, reached the point of no return.
So was that the sentiment of the fan base? Was there still hope, even after the game against Mississippi State when he didn't commit and that contract extension had been there for a while and the rumors had been swirling for 3 weeks, it felt like there was still a chance that emotionally he could decide he couldn't step away?
Yeah, I mean, we did this in 2022 where it was signed, sealed, and delivered for Auburn until it wasn't, right? That was a spur-of-the-moment change that happened right as everybody thought it was kind of over. So I guess there was always maybe that little glimmer from fans and people associated with the program. But I guess as it, and especially after the game too, because obviously we had to ask about it, and he got emotional talking about it and talking about his father and how he wished he could have his guidance right now, and how he said he was going to talk to Nick Saban and Pete Carroll, two of his mentors, about next steps and what to do, and how this was a really hard decision for him. And so I think when you hear those sorts of things, it seems like there's a possibility still, right? But then as things kind of unfolded on Saturday night, when we were under the impression that we were going to have the quote unquote announcement on his future, when we didn't get that, and then reports started coming out about the meeting, and the holdup being that Lane wanted to keep coaching throughout the playoff, and that he was pretty upset that Ole Miss wasn't going to let him. I think that's when the hope was kind of out the door. But I do think there was at least a glimmer after the Egg Bowl that maybe the emotional moment would potentially win out this time.
And so on Saturday, because the Egg Bowl was Friday, on Saturday they're supposed to have that meeting. It gets bumped back, and then we realize that the meeting's gone nearly 4 hours. What is your understanding of the tone and messaging of that meeting, and where things were kind of left between Lane Kiffin and Keith Carter?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it was, at least from everything that I've seen, that Lane had all but told them that he was leaving, and that the holdup was really, can I coach this team? And I think it got. I think for his entire time here, Lane has been he's had the keys to the castle, and he's been given everything that he's wanted and asked for, and this time he wasn't, and I think that was pretty tough. So I think there was some emotion there in terms of obviously he's going to leave here, but he still wants to see this thing through, and Ole Miss telling him no. I think that was probably pretty tough for him. So that's my understanding on why it took so long. I don't know if it was necessarily that he was still weighing his options, at least from what I've seen, so much as it was trying to get this one last thing in Oxford to kind of go his way.
And obviously it did not. And as you mentioned, Lane Kiffin threatening to take his staff to LSU is the report. And then you see a pivot by Keith Carter to the defensive coordinator, Pete Golding, as not only interim head coach, but the permanent head coach. What did you make of that decision and what that means for Ole Miss for the next 30 days and for the next 3 years?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, if you're looking in the micro as of right now, it was kind of the move that had to happen, because you have a team that is in the playoffs, that you need continuity of some sort as you try to see this thing out. I think at least most of us locally thought Pete eventually was going to be a head coach wherever that may be. I think that just the whole process of Lane's being courted by Florida and obviously LSU just kind of screwed up the timeline with looking for external hires, because those started all coming off the board like yesterday morning, right? And we didn't really, it's probably hard for Ole Miss to, obviously you go through some candidates, but there's still that hope that Lane's going to come back. So I think they were kind of behind the eight ball a little bit in terms of the external look. So I think that just in terms of for this year, I think Pete makes a lot of sense. I mean, they'll run through a wall for that guy. He is a football guy. Players love him. He's an elite recruiter, and so I think that's one thing. For right now, that's good. But I think we all assumed he would be a head coach at some point. I think it probably happened a little bit sooner than we thought. But there's precedent for guys getting taken, losing their coach, and then not interim, but a guy on staff gets elevated and it works out. So I think that's the hope here. And Pete's committed to Ole Miss. He loves Ole Miss. He's really loved it since he's been here. So I think that goes over really well with the fan base too, just kind of given how the Lane Kiffin era ended here.
Do you have a sense of Charlie Weiss Jr.'s future? We know that he got on the plane from Oxford and was in Baton Rouge last night. I saw some reports that there is potentially a door open for him to go back. What do you feel like the likelihood is there? We know everything's fluid, but how do you feel about it?
Yeah, I mean, I again, the initial reporting that was like like, you get on this plane or you're not ever coming with, which was, that was, again, another wild twist and turn to this whole situation. But I know, obviously, he did get on the plane. But no, I saw the reports too that there's the opportunity to come back. I think it's partly, going to be, and he has to probably make this decision sooner than later, because Ole Miss has got to, start getting his ducks in a row for the CFP and whatnot. But honestly, I could see it going either way. I mean, obviously Lane is really close with Charlie Weiss. They've been together before. But at the same time, I think he's pretty loyal to his players here too, and I wouldn't be surprised if he wants to see this thing out. So I could see it going either way. I do not think it's a done deal that he's going to go to LSU. I know that the plane, the optics of that make it look that way, but I could see it. I could see him coming back to Oxford in some reality.
How do you think Keith Carter handled this situation for the last 6 weeks?
I mean, it was not going to be a winnable situation in terms of, listen, you are facing the reality of losing the best coach in your modern history. There's no question about what Lane did here. There's 11 10-win seasons in Ole Miss history, and 4 of them have come in the last 5 years under Lane Kiffin. There's no questioning, the work that he's done here. But I think that, I know there was a national conversation about, well, you should let Lane coach the playoff. He built this thing. But I've always kind of been on the other side of that, and clearly where Keith was, that, if he's out the door, you can't have him in your building anymore. Then the playoff becomes a month-long infomercial for LSU and poaching players and showing everybody, the new coach at LSU. I think that would have been an even worse look. So I think he handled as best he could. He stood firm in what he was going to do. I don't know if every athletic director would have stood up the way Keith did. So again, a really tough situation. But if you were steadfast that him coaching, if you knew he was leaving, and that him coaching the playoff was just not good for your institution, you had to hold true to it, and he did. And I think he gained a lot of respect from people, especially here, for doing that.
Last one here. It's an unknowable question, but just your opinion. Like, what do you think the Pete Golding era in Oxford looks like?
I know. I mean, it's impossible to know until we see, I guess, the whole staff
Sure.
fill itself out and who is staying and who's going. It's I wouldn't be surprised if it goes really well. It's hard to say that, oh well, they're just going to continue what they've been doing, because Ole Miss historically has not had this sort of continuous success. I mean, this is a golden time. So to just say it would continue, I don't know if that's fair, but he's going to recruit really, really well. He gets along, with the players and the coaches, and it sounds like the defensive staff really wants to stay with him. So I think that's good. I think that there's a chance that it goes well. Will it be these series of 10-win seasons? I don't know. That has not happened here very often. But I think that things are in place for him, just in terms of the infrastructure that Lane created here, the buy-in from the university and the athletic department in terms of funding, NIL, and the collectives and all that sort of stuff. I think there's a lot of things in place for him to be successful. To what extent, I don't know, but it's hard for me to see it not working in some capacity.
We shall see. Ole Miss got some pretty important football games, well, at least one of them, to play here coming up in 3 weeks. Michael, we appreciate some time. Get some more rest, all right?
Absolutely. Appreciate you.
He's Michael Katz, Northeast Mississippi Daily Journal, covering the Ole Miss Rebels. Step aside, come back and close out hour number 1 next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Hitter's House at Marucci. It is up and running. You can shop, you can save, you can swing into the holidays with the Hitter's House warehouse sale Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. Right now, started on November 28th. We're into December now, so you got 2 weeks until December 14th. Come by, take some hacks in the indoor batting cages. You can rent them per round or by a time limit. You can sample some of their incredible products, Marucci, Victus, Balm, Lizard Skin, The Stable. Plus, you can take tours. You can go on the tour and get 20% off at Hitter's House that same day. For more information and the tickets, the campus tour, you can find them at maruccisports.com /campus-tour. That's MarucciSports.com /campus-tour. It's the Hitter's House at Marucci now until December 14th.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
Closing out hour number 1 here on this busy Monday. It's time now for Sports Health, presented by Ochsner Andrews Orthopedics and Sports Medicine Institute. Bring on our friend Dr. Jeremy Burnham from Ochsner. Doc, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing great, hon. How are you doing?
Doing quite well. I have a big picture question, not specifically about any one player here. LSU's had a lot of injuries over the last 3 weeks of the season, and one of them that has been lingering is Whit Weeks. And we talked to him last week, and he said he had a broken foot. But basically broken ankle that they were referring to as a bone bruise, but he said it split in half. And he was talking about how he could come back and play 15 snaps, could come back and play 30 snaps, and putting that like pitch count load on any injured football player. Is that generally speaking because that's all that someone can handle, or you're just trying to reduce the risk of a re-injury at that point? Like I realize y'all advise folks time to time. What's the theory behind the quote unquote pitch count there for a football player?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a lot, like nowadays it's a lot about load management, you know? So in the old days, maybe you would just tell somebody, okay, sit out 6 weeks and then come back and see us or something like that, right? And that's really not what we do with sports medicine at a high level. And certainly LSU sports medicine team is very high level. And so, you know, what we try to do with the athletes that we're working with is we're trying to figure out how quick can we get them back. And it really ends up being a progressive thing. And so you are looking at load management. Okay, we're going to plot this out over the next 4 weeks, and we're going to let you get 15 plays, then 30, or we're going to let you play a quarter and then 2 quarters. And so it's all about trying to optimize healing, but also understanding there's a timeline associated with sports medicine and trying to get people as much participation as possible.
How customizable is that injury to injury, person to person? Because I was imagine, like, most people want to get back to doing the things they do, and you probably have to hold them back a little bit. Like, is it hard and fast on a lot of things? If you've got this injury, that's got to be your time period, or you just kind of just see how the patient's progressing?
It is very individualized.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's position specific. Obviously, sport plays a role. What grade are you in? Is this your senior year? Are you in college? You know, what are you trying to do next year? Are you trying to go to the combine? I mean, all of these things play a role. And then imaging and diagnostic tools and ultrasound, MRI, all these things have gotten so much better that we're really able to dial in the extent of somebody's injury and customize their return to play plan according to what they're trying to do and what their specific injury is. And, you know, everybody always wants like hard and fast rules. And really what I tell people now is there's not really, you know, a cookbook for this. This is we're adjusting everything to that specific patient situation.
Very cool. Dr. Jeremy Burnham is our guest here from Ochsner. I know you want to give a shout out to a couple of teams that are still rocking and rolling in the playoffs.
Yeah, hon, I think, look, this is going into the semifinals of the playoffs, and I'm always so impressed with the teams that we take care of. When you see these high school players out there giving it their all this many weeks into the season, right? Everybody's getting banged up. Everybody's got some kind of ache and pain at this point. Shout out specifically Dunham High School and Plaquemine High School still in the hunt, you know, super proud of them. Would like to give a shout out to one of my colleagues, Dr. Julie Newman. She was voted runner-up favorite orthopedist recently, and I think that's just a tremendous honor for her. Glad to have. She's a foot and ankle and sports medicine specialist, so really happy to have great colleagues that are out there doing awesome work in the community.
Fantastic stuff from Ochsner. Anything new over at Elite?
Hey, we're really focusing right now on injury prevention hunts. We've gone out. We've been asked to go to several high schools, some schools that we're already doing partnerships with, and some that have just reached out to us and said, look, can you come do this for us? And we're doing ACL injury prevention plans. So we're happy to go meet with any strength coach or athletic trainer or coaches at the school and really trying to get the word out there and cut back on the number of ACL injuries.
Dr. Burnham, we appreciate a little bit of time. We'll talk in a couple of weeks.
Have a good one. Thank you.
That is Dr. Jeremy Burnham from Ochsner. At Ochsner Andrews Sports Medicine Institute, we know sports industries can be unpredictable. One situation you can protect yourself from is safely returning to play after an injury. It's important to seek care by a sports medicine specialist who is expert in rehabilitation. Their care plans can include building back flexibility, balance, endurance, plus psychological support to get athletes back in the game. To learn more about sports injury prevention and treatment, visit ochsner.org/BRortho. Appreciate Dr. Burnham for giving us a little bit of time here on this Monday. You know, Whit was out there a good bit but they got to that pitch count on Saturday, and having talked about the game that LSU played against Oklahoma on Saturday, and you saw he was playing, he was going full speed, he was out there, and then you looked up and he had the boot on the sideline. Same thing you saw on senior day when he played 15 snaps and in the second half put the boot on the sideline. He's not re-injuring that, but they're just keeping him on a pitch count. We talked to Witt last week before the Oklahoma game about who the new LSU coach would be, and he gave a big grin. He did a good job. He played coy. Obviously, he dates Lane Kiffin's daughter. He played it coy. He didn't give us anything concrete, not even anything suggestive. He just chuckled a little bit when we asked. If people think I know, we'll see. But then he also told us that he's got that break in the ankle, and that he's on a pitch count. And so we don't know if he'll play in the bowl game. We don't know if he'll go to the draft. We don't know if he'll be back at LSU next year. Certainly got an interesting relationship with LSU's new football coach. It wouldn't surprise me at all if he was at the press conference today. I'm curious to see what kind of turnout there is at that press conference. They've got it at South Stadium Club, which has got a lot of room for it. It's a much bigger space there than the Lawton Room or the football ops interview room. So theoretically, a lot of folks could be there, and I would imagine Landry Kiffin will be there, and I would imagine Whit Weeks will be there. But we don't know what the future holds for Whit. But curious about that as well. I know he's a big fan of Blake Baker, and this year just didn't go the way he wanted it to. So maybe he wants to run it back one more year. Maybe it's time to go to professional football. We'll see. But wanted to get a thought there from Dr. Burnham on big picture injury things. You missed any of the first hour, all my Lane Kiffin thoughts in the first 30 minutes. You can find him at Hunt on LSU, wherever you find your podcast, or on YouTube. Talk to Denton Day in 35 minutes. More LSU talk, plus Saints when we come back after SportsCenter on this Monday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.